Elena exchanged a quick glance with Arya. What could be worse than the Horde? She muttered under her breath. The room fell silent. Arya turned to her crew, her voice calm but with a note of urgency. Prepare for the meeting. We need to find out what's going on. The Confederation's revelation. Hours later, the fleet arrived at the designated meeting point, a massive space station in a neutral sector of space. It was one of the few places in the galaxy where all species, no matter their allegiance, could meet without fear of reprisal. As the ships docked, Arya stood beside Elena, both women waiting to learn what the Confederation had discovered. A voice crackled through the intercom. Commander Solis, Captain Marlowe, your presence is requested in the briefing room. They exchanged one last look before making their way down the long corridors of the station. The door to the briefing room slid open with a hiss, and they stepped into a dimly lit chamber, where high-ranking officials from across the galaxy were already seated. At the head of the table stood the Counselor of the Confederation, a tall alien species known as Orion, whose metallic skin shimmered in the light. Commander Solis, Captain Marlowe, Orion began, his voice calm but filled with an unspoken gravity. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We have received intelligence that changes everything. Arya took her seat. What's happened? Orion gestured toward the large holographic screen at the front of the room. We've learned that the Crystal Horde's threat was not just a random occurrence. It's part of something much larger, a galactic awakening. There is an ancient faction that predates even the Horde. They've been dormant for millennia, hidden in the farthest reaches of space, and now they are waking up. Arya felt a chill creep down her spine. Who are they? Orion's eyes glinted with uncertainty. They are known as the Aegis. Their power is beyond anything the galaxy has ever encountered. The Horde fears them because, long ago, the Aegis wiped out their creators. The Horde's crystalline nature is the result of the Aegis influence, and now they are returning. The room fell into stunned silence. Elena's voice broke the tension. And what does that mean for us? It means, Orion said, that the Crystal Horde is only the first wave. The Aegis are coming, and they have their sights set on the galaxy. And if we don't prepare, we will be annihilated. Arya's mind raced. The stakes had just risen higher than they ever imagined. The galaxy had barely survived the Horde. Now, they were facing something even more powerful, something older, and much more dangerous. If humanity was to survive, they had to act quickly, and together. We need to mobilize, Arya said firmly. We can't wait for them to come to us. We need to take the fight to them, into the abyss. The moment the word Aegis was spoken, the weight of the galaxy seemed to settle into the room like a thick fog. Arya Solis, standing before the assembled commanders of the Galactic Alliance, felt the reality of the situation sink in deeper with each passing second. The Aegis, the ancient faction that had brought the Crystal Horde into existence, was no longer a myth or legend. They were real, and they were waking from their long slumber. Commander Solis, Orion's voice broke the stillness. We must discuss our strategy. The Aegis are not just a threat to humanity. They are a threat to all life in the galaxy. If they succeed in their return, nothing will be able to stop them. Arya nodded, trying to clear her thoughts. The Alliance had never faced an enemy like this before. The Horde had been an unprecedented challenge, but the Aegis were something else entirely. What do we know about them? Arya asked, her voice tight with tension. Their capabilities, their intentions. Orion activated a hologram, showing an intricate display of star systems on the galaxy's outer rim. The Aegis, it seemed, had been lurking beyond the fringes of known space for millennia, watching and waiting for the right time to return. The Aegis were the creators of the Crystal Horde, Orion continued, but they were far more advanced. The Horde was only an experiment, a weapon. The Aegis themselves are an entire race of beings whose technology and powers defy current understanding. They have the ability to manipulate entire star systems, change the course of celestial bodies, and wipe out entire species in the blink of an eye. A chill ran down Aria's spine. How did they disappear? Why did they disappear? They were defeated, Orion replied, his voice grim, by an alliance of species long forgotten. The Aegis were wiped out, but not destroyed. Their descendants hid, building a network of hidden stations in the farthest reaches of space, awaiting the right time to reclaim their power. Aria leaned forward, her eyes focused intently on the hologram. And now that they're waking up, what happens next? Orion hesitated, as though weighing the enormity of the answer. If the Aegis reclaim their full strength, they will see the galaxy as theirs to rule. They will stop at nothing to bend it to their will. The crystal horde will be nothing compared to what's coming. A tense silence fell across the room. Aria knew the stakes had just gone beyond any previous conflict. This was no longer a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. Humanity could no longer hide in the shadows. They had to stand tall, united, or the galaxy would fall under the thumb of a force too great to defeat. The plan of resistance. The mood in the room was heavy with the weight of the new reality. The Alliance had barely survived the Crystal Horde. They had no illusions about the Aegis. They were an enemy of unimaginable power, one that could crush entire fleets with a mere thought. Yet, in the midst of the fear, there was a spark of determination. "We must form a united front," Aria said, breaking the silence. "We cannot afford to face the Aegis alone. Every species, every fleet, every force we have must come together. We need to develop a strategy to fight them on our terms." "Good. We'll engage them in the heart of the nebula. Prepare the disruptor beams. Once they're inside, we'll shut down their communication systems and take them out one by one." The gamble was risky. The nebula's chaotic nature would prevent the Horde from using their usual tactics, but it would also limit the effectiveness of the humans' weapons. Their technology might be more advanced, but in the heart of a stellar storm, everything could go wrong in an instant. Elena's voice came through the comm system again. "We're in position. Initiating the trap now." The human fleet moved swiftly, the decoy ships leading the way into the core of the nebula cluster. The Crystal Horde ships, eager to destroy their prey, followed without hesitation, crossing the invisible boundary into the nebula's heart. At that moment, the traps were sprung. The first wave of decoy ships activated their hidden weapons, unleashing concentrated bursts of energy that temporarily blinded the Horde ships. The human disruptor beams fired next, striking their targets with precision. The crystal ships faltered, their systems glitching as the disruptors overloaded their shields. "We've got them," Elena shouted over the comms. "The Horde ships are immobilized. Move in for the kill." The humans, now emboldened, pressed forward with a relentless attack, using every weapon at their disposal. Laser beams, plasma pulses, and energy torpedoes rained down upon the Horde, cutting through their crystalline hulls like a hot knife through butter. The Horde ships, unable to adapt fast enough, began to disintegrate, their once impenetrable shields flickering and finally failing. Aria's heart raced as she watched the battle unfold. For the first time, it seemed like the humans might actually win. But the Crystal Horde wasn't a species to surrender easily. As more of their ships fell, the remaining Horde vessels began to retreat, but not before they unleashed a devastating counterattack. The nebula shimmered as a massive energy blast from the Horde's core ship pierced through the chaos, striking a nearby human vessel. The ship's shields flickered and then collapsed, and the vessel exploded in a flash of light. The sound of it echoed through the comm system, sending a wave of grief through the crew. "No," Elena cried out, her voice breaking. "They're going to wipe us out if we don't end this now." Aria's voice cut through the chaos. "Don't panic. The battle's not over yet. We'll finish this. Prepare the final assault. We have one chance to end this." As the final wave of the Crystal Horde began to retreat into the depths of the nebula, Aria ordered everything the humans had left to be fired. She didn't care about the consequences. If they were going to survive, it had to be now. Every human ship, every piece of technology they had left, would be used to strike the final blow. As the last of the Horde's ships fell into the abyss of the nebula, Arya took a breath, letting the moment sink in. The battle wasn't won just by superior firepower. It was won by humanity's resourcefulness, their ability to adapt, and most importantly, their unity in the face of unimaginable odds. The nebula was silent again. The only sound was the steady hum of the fleet's systems and the distant cry of a lone ship drifting among the stars. The war was far from over, but the first victory had been won. Humanity had proven that it could face the impossible and survive. Facing the Crystal Horde, the quiet hum of the starship was interrupted only by the occasional beeping of systems, the soft murmur of commanders issuing orders, and the distant sounds of the preparations taking place across the fleet. Commander Arya Solis stood at the forefront of the bridge, her arms crossed tightly as she stared at the massive holomap before her. The Galactic Alliance fleet was in position, their ships aligned in an almost perfect formation. In front of them, stretching across the void of space, was the incoming swarm, the Crystal Horde. "What are we looking at, Arya?" Elena Marlowe, the calm yet fierce captain who stood beside her, asked quietly. The tension in her voice was palpable. It was hard to stay calm when the enemy you were facing could wipe out entire civilizations without even breaking a sweat. Arya didn't answer immediately. Her mind was racing through the data, trying to calculate the best course of action, trying to predict the Horde's next move. Her eyes darted across the holomap, where multiple red icons blinked. Crystal Horde ships, each one unique in its deadly design. These weren't like any enemy they'd ever encountered before. The ships weren't made of metal. They were organic, almost like living creatures, with jagged crystalline formations that glinted menacingly in the darkness of space. They weren't simply ships. They were weapons, and they could adapt to anything. "Admiral," one of Arya's officers called, bringing her out of her thoughts. "The fleet is ready, but we got only one chance. If we don't act quickly, we'll be overwhelmed." Arya nodded grimly, pulling herself up to full attention. "Deploy the human-designed energy shields. Their systems might be able to withstand the crystal impacts longer than the Alliance's standard shields," she ordered. She had confidence in the technology humanity had been hiding for centuries, shields that were far beyond anything the Alliance had ever used. But that wouldn't be enough. She knew it. As the shield activation buzzed across the fleet, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that they were still outclassed. The Horde didn't just fight. They consumed. Their ships didn't need to recharge like normal vessels. They absorbed the energy from enemy ships, from planets, from anything in their path. It was as if the Horde was an unending wave of destruction, sweeping across the galaxy with nothing but silence and efficiency. "Captain," Arya said as she turned toward Elena, "we've seen this before. There's nothing like it. They move like a swarm, but they adapt too quickly. We need to fight smarter, not harder. If we simply engage them head-on, we'll lose." Elena's eyes narrowed. "What do you suggest?" Arya stood silent for a moment. "We can't win this with firepower alone. We'll have to use their own tactics against them. We need to learn how they adapt and then exploit that weakness." She paused, her hands tightening on the railing. "Prepare the defenders. It's time." The defenders were a part of humanity's secret arsenal, weapons that had been designed and refined over centuries, but only in the last few months had humanity begun to deploy them. These weapons were unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. They weren't designed to destroy. They were designed to reveal, to shine a light on the truth, on the humanity that had once been believed to be extinct. As the orders went out, Elena stepped to the side, her gaze fixed on the incoming Horde. The fleet's preparations felt like a final rehearsal before a show that was doomed to fail. "The defenders are ready," Arya said, her voice now steely with resolve. "Activate them." Without hesitation, her officers triggered the systems that would activate the humanity's ultimate weapon, What followed was a spectacle that no one aboard the ship would ever forget. From every ship in the human fleet, golden orbs of light suddenly burst forth. They moved like swarms of fireflies, but their presence was commanding and ominous. As they surrounded the crystal horde ships, the very nature of the battlefield shifted. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was an experience, a transformation. The first few waves of the horde seemed unfazed. They simply plowed through the golden orbs, sending fragments of crystal into the blackness of space. But then the orbs began to change, their light shifting. What was once a bright, defensive pulse began to emit something else. Images. Holographic projections filled the surrounding space, displaying scenes from the history of humanity. People working together, building cities, forging relationships with other species. The holograms showed humanity's greatest achievements: the peaceful missions to distant stars, the discovery of cures to plagues, the diversion of catastrophic asteroid impacts, and even the secret aid they had given to other species in their darkest hours. The first reaction from the horde was confusion. They had no concept of compassion, of peace. They were engineered to consume, not to understand. The ships faltered, some slowing their approach as the images filled their sensors. The chaotic battle began to slow, almost as if the horde had been distracted. But then the unexpected happened. "We have incoming energy signatures," another officer called. "There are more ships on the way, not just from the horde." Arya turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "Pirate ships, Commander," the officer replied. "They're responding to the energy signals from the battle. They've locked onto us and are advancing quickly." A chill ran down Arya's spine. Pirates had been a constant nuisance, but now they were a direct threat to both the Alliance and humanity. "We've got no time to waste," she muttered. "We can't afford to get caught between the two." Alina's voice cut through the tension. "We can't fight both. We need a diversion, something to pull the pirates away from the main fleet." Arya nodded, already forming a plan. "Prepare the decoy ships. Let's give them something to chase." Within moments, several human ships, equipped with advanced stealth systems, began to pull away from the main fleet, drawing the pirates toward them. It wasn't perfect. Pirates were notoriously unpredictable, but it was their best shot. The battle, meanwhile, continued. The crystal horde seemed to be wavering, their ships still confused by the projections, unsure of how to proceed. The defenders were doing their job, but it was clear that the horde wasn't going to simply leave. They would adapt, evolve. And that's when Arya realized this was only the beginning. Alina came over to her side. "Arya, we're making progress, but we need more time. What's our next move?" "We hold the line," Arya said, a grim determination setting in. "We keep them busy long enough for the rest of the fleet to get into position. The real fight is coming. And this is only the start." The screen before her flickered, and for the briefest of moments, Arya saw the face of her old mentor, Commander David Wright, flashing across the tactical display. He had been a part of humanity's secret operations for years. Now he was leading the charge for the survival of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. "David," she whispered to herself, her voice quiet, "we'll do this for you." The battle unfolds. The vastness of space stretched before Commander Arya Solis as she stood at the center of the bridge, watching the chaos unfold. Her heart raced, not just from the adrenaline of the fight, but from the overwhelming pressure that weighed on her shoulders. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight to prove humanity's place in the galaxy. The fate of their species rested on the edge of a knife, and every decision counted. The combined fleet of the Galactic Alliance and humanity's ships was engaged in an epic struggle with the Crystal Horde. Their enemies, crystalline vessels that seemed to shimmer and pulse with an unnatural energy, were relentless. For every blast that struck a Horde ship, another one appeared, seemingly unaffected by the damage. It was as if they had an unending supply of power, their ability to regenerate faster than their enemies could destroy them. Aria's eyes flickered between the tactical display and the incoming communications. The Alliance ships were holding, but just barely. The humans, however, were showing an unexpected level of resilience. Their ships, equipped with advanced technology and untested weapons, were outclassing many of the Alliance's vessels. "Commander, we've received a communication from the fleet," the comm officer called out, interrupting Aria's thoughts. "Put it through," she said, not taking her eyes off the display. The screen flickered, and a face she hadn't seen in years appeared before her. It was Captain Elena Marlowe, her close friend and ally. Elena's face was grim, but she was still focused on her mission. "Aria, we've hit a snag," Elena said, her voice low but urgent. "The Horde is adapting faster than we anticipated. Their ships have developed a countermeasure to our energy shields. Our weapons are barely making a dent in their hulls." Aria's jaw tightened. "We need to buy time. There's no way we can overpower them without more resources." "I agree," Elena replied. "We're pushing forward with the decoy ships. But it's not enough. We need to make them think we're retreating, draw them into a trap." Aria thought for a moment, considering the options. "Do it. We'll need to double the decoy fleet's energy output to make them believe we're retreating. The moment they chase, we'll hit them with the full force of our hidden weaponry." "Understood. We'll need time to coordinate, but we're ready to execute." As Elena's image vanished from the screen, Aria turned to the rest of her crew. "Prepare for an ambush. We're luring the Horde into a choke point. All ships, set your course for the Nebula Cluster. We'll make them chase us into the heart of the storm." The Nebula Cluster was one of the most dangerous areas of space, a region filled with volatile radiation, gravitational anomalies, and hidden asteroids. It was a perfect place to ambush the Crystal Horde. The risk was high, but the reward was even higher. The cluster was so chaotic that any ship entering would be forced to slow down, disorienting their enemies. It would give the humans and their allies the edge they needed. The fleet shifted into motion, moving quickly toward the cluster. In the distance, the Crystal Horde ships followed, their pursuit relentless and without hesitation. As they entered the region, the stars around them seemed to blur and shift, the gravitational pull of nearby objects warping space itself. It was beautiful, yet haunting, as though they were entering a storm where no one could predict the outcome. The human ships released flares of energy into the blackness, illuminating the nebula's gases and creating a dazzling array of colors. But it wasn't just a show. It was a decoy, designed to make the Horde believe they were retreating in disarray. With every burst of light, the Horde ships followed closer, their ships swarming like vultures circling prey. "Are they falling for it?" Elena asked, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and doubt. "Yes," Aria said, her eyes locked on the incoming ships. "They think we're retreating, and they're not stopping to consider our next move." The price of victory. The echoes of the battle faded, but the toll it had taken on the fleet was evident. The nebula, once vibrant with the chaos of energy and light, was now eerily still. Only the remnants of the defeated Crystal Horde ships drifted in the dark void, broken and drifting like forgotten debris. The human fleet, though victorious, was not without its scars. Several ships had taken heavy damage, their hulls pockmarked by crystal shrapnel and their systems flickering in the aftermath of the battle. Commander Aria Solis stood in the center of the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the view screen. It displayed the remains of the battle, the debris from the Crystal Horde's shattered fleet, and the serene glow of the nebula slowly reclaiming its normalcy. "Victory," Aria whispered, though there was no joy in her voice. The cost had been too high. The battle had been brutal, and while they had defeated the Horde for now, it felt more like a temporary reprieve than a true victory. The question that haunted Aria was simple. At what cost? "Commander," Elena Marlowe's voice interrupted her thoughts. "We've taken damage, but nothing we can't repair. The fleet's morale is holding strong. I think they're more relieved than anything else." Aria turned to face her. Elena was a rock, a constant source of strength and clarity, but even she couldn't mask the uncertainty in her eyes. The battle had been hard on everyone, and it wasn't just the physical toll that weighed heavily. It was the deeper realization that they had just faced one of the galaxy's greatest threats, and they had no idea what was next. "We've won a battle," Arya replied, her voice quiet. "But we've only delayed the inevitable. The Horde will regroup, adapt, and strike again. And next time, they'll be stronger. We need to prepare for what's coming." Alina gave her a sharp nod. "Then let's do what we do best. We've always been able to outthink them. And now we have something they don't: unity. The other species in the Alliance, they'll stand with us. We have allies now." Arya's expression softened. "You're right, but the truth is, humanity can't stand alone anymore. We can't keep hiding, hoping for another miracle. The Confederation has to accept us fully, on our own terms. We have to work together as equals, not subordinates. If we don't, we'll fall back into the shadows." The weight of Arya's words lingered in the air. For centuries, humanity had been in hiding, working from the shadows, offering their help quietly, anonymously. But that time was over. Humanity had to come out from the darkness and stand shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the galaxy. Only then could they ensure their survival, and the survival of everyone else. Alina placed a hand on Arya's shoulder. "We'll make them see. We always have." Arya nodded, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Despite the alliances they had forged and the victories they had achieved, they had yet to convince the rest of the galaxy that humanity could be trusted. There were still factions within the Confederation, species that were fearful of humanity's power and potential. It would be a long road ahead, one that Arya wasn't sure they could walk without facing more obstacles. "Let's get back to the fleet," Arya said finally, turning toward the door. "We need to prepare for the next phase. The Horde may be gone for now, but there's something much darker coming. The new threat." The quiet hum of the fleet's engines provided a sense of calm, but underneath that tranquility, there was an underlying tension. The human ships moved in formation with the Alliance's fleet, heading toward their rendezvous point in the nearby star system. But as they approached, something felt wrong. Arya could sense it in the air. There was an oppressive stillness, a silence that seemed to hang over the entire fleet. "Commander, we've received an urgent communication from the Confederation," the comm officer said, his voice crackling through the comm system. "They're calling for an emergency meeting with the fleet commanders. It's about the Crystal Horde. They have new intelligence." Arya's brow furrowed. "What new intelligence?" The officer hesitated for a moment before answering. "They've discovered something. A new faction that's been operating in the shadows. Something even the Horde fears. The return of humanity." Commander Arya Solis stood before the Galactic Alliance Council, her gaze unwavering despite the exhaustion in her eyes. The council chamber was a grand hall, filled with representatives from all corners of the galaxy, some with scales, others with tentacles, and even a few made entirely of energy. They were all here to hear one thing: humanity's return. "Humanity could have wiped out my fleet," Arya explained, her voice steady, yet tinged with emotion. "Instead, they helped us in ways we could never have imagined. For 5 centuries, they operated from the shadows, quietly saving countless lives, diverting asteroids, curing plagues, and preventing wars." Counselor Zinner, a tall, bony figure with translucent skin, looked skeptical. "You were sent to capture or destroy them, Commander. Why are you advocating for them now?" "I was wrong," Arya admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "We were all wrong. Humanity didn't hide because they were weak or afraid. They hid because they knew the galaxy wasn't ready for them." At that moment, the chamber doors opened, and a small human delegation walked in. The room fell silent. This was the first time many of these species had seen a human in person. Arya's colleague, Captain Alina Marlowe, stood at the front, her face composed, but her eyes full of resolve. "May the human delegation speak," Zeiner announced, his voice filled with disbelief. Elena stepped forward, her hand resting on the small device that activated a hologram. Images of advanced medical technologies, clean energy systems, and starships capable of bending time appeared before the council. "These are the gifts humanity offers," Elena said. "We come in peace to share what we've learned in our isolation." The room buzzed with whispers. Some looked intrigued, while others, like Counselor Vrick, a reptilian alien with glowing eyes, appeared cautious. "Why should we trust you?" Vrick challenged. "You've been hiding for centuries. How do we know you don't intend to take control?" Elena's voice remained calm. "If control was our goal, we would have taken it long ago. We chose to protect, not conquer." Captain Marlowe stepped forward, adding, "Humanity has always valued peace, but now, more than ever, we must work together." Outside the chamber, thousands gathered in front of massive screens, watching the historic meeting unfold. Among them stood a group of humans, including scientists and engineers, their faces reflecting both hope and anxiety. Among them was Ben Carter, a young tech expert, who whispered to his friend Lisa Morgan, "Do you think they'll accept us?" "They should," Lisa replied, her voice tinged with optimism. "The evidence is clear." Back in the chamber, the debate raged on for hours, but finally, Counselor Zeiner rose to speak. "The Galactic Alliance recognizes humanity's peaceful intentions," he said, the room falling silent. "We accept your gifts and offer formal recognition of New Earth as an independent world." Elena let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. But Zeiner wasn't finished. "However, human technology must be monitored, and your population growth restricted." Arya stood suddenly, her fists clenched. "No. These restrictions are what forced humanity into hiding in the first place. We don't need your permission to exist. Humanity offers partnership, not domination." The council chamber erupted into chaos. But just as it seemed there would be no resolution, alarms blared throughout the room. A technician rushed in, breathless. "Commander, we're detecting multiple unknown vessels entering our space," he said urgently. "They're not responding to any communication, and they're moving faster than anything we've ever encountered." Suddenly, the screen above the council chamber flickered to life, showing a fleet of crystalline ships approaching at lightning speed. "The Crystal Horde," Elena murmured, her voice grim. "We've been tracking them for decades. They consume everything in their path." Arya stepped forward. "This is why humanity has stayed hidden. We've been preparing for this day, when the Horde would finally make its move. We have a plan, but we need your help." Zeiner, visibly shaken, nodded. "What can be done?" "We unite," Elena said firmly. "Human technology combined with the resources of the Galactic Alliance. Only then do we stand a chance." And so, the fate of the galaxy would be decided. Humanity, once thought to be extinct, was back. But their greatest test was yet to come. Orion's eyes gleamed with understanding. "Indeed, Commander. But we must be swift. The Aegis are already making moves. We have located one of their key hidden stations, a site where they are rebuilding their technology. It's in an uncharted sector, deep in the galactic void. We must strike before they complete their preparations." Arya's mind raced. "We can't just throw everything we have at them blindly. We need intelligence. We need to understand what we're up against. Our first mission will be reconnaissance. If we can't find a way to disrupt their operations, we'll be at a serious disadvantage." Captain Elena Marlowe, ever practical, spoke up. "We'll need specialized forces for this mission. Elite soldiers, spies, anyone who can infiltrate the Aegis stronghold undetected. We can't afford to be sloppy. If they catch wind of our presence, it could be the end." Arya nodded in agreement. "Elena's right. We'll assemble a team of the best we have. It'll be dangerous, but it's our only shot at gathering the intel we need." The plan was simple, but its execution would be anything but. A small fleet of specially equipped human and allied ships would make their way to the hidden Aegis station, avoiding detection at all costs. They would gather any information they could, disabling key systems if possible. Every piece of data they returned with would be vital. If they could learn even one weakness in the Aegis' vast, nearly indestructible systems, it would give the galaxy a fighting chance. The dangers ahead. As the fleet moved into position, preparing for the stealth mission, Aria stood in the quiet of her private quarters, gazing out at the stars through the viewport. The vast expanse of space had always been a source of awe for her, but tonight it felt suffocating. The Aegis had once been thought to be a myth, a bogeyman of ancient stories. But now they were real. The threat was real, and humanity, along with the entire galaxy, was on the verge of a war that no one had seen coming. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime at the door. It slid open to reveal Alina, who stepped inside, her expression tense but calm. "You okay?" Alina asked, her voice soft but filled with concern. Aria didn't immediately answer. Instead, she turned, looking at her friend. "How do you do it, Alina? How do you stay calm when everything is falling apart?" Alina smiled faintly. "I don't. I just don't let it show. We've been through worse, Aria. We've faced the impossible before. We've lost people, good people, and still kept fighting. And we'll keep fighting, no matter how dark it gets." Aria nodded slowly, taking comfort in Alina's words. "I know. But this feels different. We're facing something that could destroy everything. And we don't even know what we're up against. Not really." "We'll find out," Alina replied, her voice steady. "And when we do, we'll fight back, just like we always do." Aria sighed, the weight of the decision pressing on her chest. "We're sending a team to gather intelligence. It's the first step, but we're running out of time. The Aegis are out there, and they're getting stronger by the day. If we don't act fast, it may be too late." "We'll do what we need to do," Alina said firmly. "We're not backing down." The stealth mission begins. The stealth mission was launched under the cover of darkness. The human fleet, along with a few allied ships, moved silently through the void of space, avoiding all known paths that could lead to detection. The plan was for a small team, led by Captain Marlowe, to infiltrate the Aegis station while the rest of the fleet provided support from a safe distance. They had to be invisible, undetectable, and quick. The mission could take hours, days, or longer. Every moment would bring them closer to the unknown, and every second could be their last. The journey to the station was treacherous, as the ships navigated through asteroid fields, near black holes, and other space anomalies that could easily lead to their discovery. But the team was skilled, trained to handle the impossible. They were humanity's best and brightest. Soldiers, scientists, and engineers who had dedicated their lives to ensuring their species' survival. As they neared the Aegis station, the tension was palpable. The station was massive, easily 5 times the size of any space station humanity had ever built. Its structure was a combination of sharp edges and smooth organic curves, a reflection of the Aegis' alien and terrifying technology. They had arrived. Now, the true test would begin.